with my colleagues from Brooklyn, and this is a bipartisan.
All right, well, anger is building in communities all across the city over the migrant crisis. Last week, angry residents out on Staten Island shouted at migrants arriving at the St. John Villa Academy, a shuttered school turned into a migrant shelter. And over the weekend on the Upper East Side, an anti-migrants rally turned violent outside Gracie Mansion. Groups on opposite sides of the issue clashed as the NYPD tried to keep the crowd under control.
Well, City Council member Joanne Ariola represents Southern Queens, and last month she led a rally against plans to bring a migrant tent shelter to Aqueduct Racetrack. She joins us this morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me.
You know, we don't like to see these things turn violent, but the New York City residents are absolutely fed up with this. The city cannot take this anymore. What is going on in Queens, and how are you doing to try to mitigate this?
Well, we did have a rally outside of Aqueduct to really show the reasons why Aqueduct Racetrack would not be the proper place to house migrants. They were thinking of putting 2,000 migrants on that Naira property. First off, there are no amenities there. There's no way to bring in water supply for the migrants. And also, we still have horse racing at that location. So, you know, the city of New York deemed it not an appropriate location, which we were very happy with. But every day there's a constant battle, because the next thing we heard was that Floyd Bennett Field was being looked at. Why? Because the governor kept writing letters to the president asking for the usage of national historical parkland. I belong to the Common Sense Caucus, and we were for months sending letters to the governor asking her not to use our parkland.
Because she's probably also saying, like, there's nowhere else to put them. However, the response from the federal government, quite upsetting for New York City and New Yorkers here, because they're saying, the Biden administration is saying, no, New York, you got it wrong. You got it wrong for the way that you've handled this migrant crisis, structural, organizational issues.
Right.
And that has got to sting as the mayor and as the governor to hear that.
Well, I think it does sting. It stings especially to the mayoral administration. And I saw in your last segment what the Biden administration said, and shame on them. There has never been a humanitarian crisis throughout all of the humanitarian crises that we have seen here in the United States that was not handled by the federal government. Department of Homeland Services is not equipped to really manage a humanitarian crisis as large as this. We now have in our care, as of our last asylum seeker meeting, 110,500 migrants.
110,000?
Yes.
You said something that about 3,000 arrived just last week. Is that right? What did
They're coming at a rate of 3,000 a week, 2,500 a week. We haven't seen a slowdown. At that point, how are you really vetting them? When you're taking 300 migrants in and taking them into the Row Hotel or over to the Roosevelt Hotel, where it's doing intake, how are you really separating who are asylum seekers, who are people who are just using this as an opportunity to come into our city illegally, and how do we provide services for them?
And we've seen that certain communities don't want them to be there, whether it's Midtown Manhattan, whether it's out on some of the boroughs, out on Staten Island. Where are we supposed to put these people?
Well, I think that what we need to do is try to say to the governor, say to the mayor, say to the governor and say to the president, instead of telling us what we're not doing, help us do something. We need to start to bus migrants out of this city. This is a big state. This is a big country, and we should not, as the city of New York, be taking on the entire responsibility of this crisis. And that's really what we're doing.
Are other cities getting as many people as we've gotten here, as you've heard?
But nowhere near the amount of people that we're getting. And yes, people are outraged about it, because in Staten Island, you have a school that is adjacent to homes, right? In Floyd Bennett Field, it is a flood zone. The day we held a rally with my colleagues from Brooklyn, and this is a bipartisan event, by the way, we went over, it was just a mild, rainy day. My chief of staff and I went over, and if you look on Facebook, I am up to my ankles in water on just a misting day. There's a reason why there are no houses.
Let me ask you a question, though, because when you talk about busing them out to other cities, spread the load out throughout the state, the mayor wants that to happen. He wants the right to shelter rule to apply to other cities upstate. The governor is saying that's not happening.
Well, why? Why would the governor say that? This has to be a shared responsibility. So Kathy Hochul can't punt and say, well, I'll give you $20 million for services, but now I want to use your national park. She knows that's never going to fly. It's not going to fly with the people in the community. We're going to use your empty schools. Those schools were slated to be high schools. We need high schools desperately in this city. When really what she's just saying is, well, I'm doing my job. You don't want it there. And of course people are taking to the streets because they realize it's not the right action.
Who's ultimately not doing their job here? Who is ultimately failing in terms of this whole crisis?
There is no doubt that President Biden is failing this city and this country.
By how?
By not addressing it and by knocking anything that's being done. If anything, this administration is guilty of its own success in trying to do what they're doing. But at some point, our administration is going to have to say, we are now going to do what other states have done. We're going to put people on buses, disperse them to other sanctuary states, and if the federal government doesn't like it, let them sue us.
Easier said than done to do that?
No, not really. Listen, other states are doing it. It's time for us to do it. We're overburdened. We cannot afford $12 million by next year. I'm sorry, $12 billion by next year to take care of the migrants.
How many people are in your district? Just get a better
Just under 170 people.
How many?
170,000.
Yeah.
So that's almost the size of the migrant
Of course.
So that's like adding.
So it's like their own town. So they'll need their own police force, their own council member, their own all their own services. Now, who is going to really suffer if we continue in this way? It's going to be our services: sanitation, education, police department, fire department. And so we have to stop it now.
Any way people can get a hold of you? Maybe they want to join your movement, kind of.
Sure. You can get a hold of me at our office, and that's at District 32 at council.nyc.gov. And also, we're going to put up on our Facebook page, and we'll share it with you. We are asking all the residents to send a letter to the governor's office and say this has to stop.
All right, Councilmember Joanne Ariola from Queens, asking big requests there to people to write those handwritten letters or email letters.
Emails, call, write a letter. Let them know how you're feeling.
Yeah.
You're the voter. They want to know what you're feeling.
Very good point.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Angel. 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 You're a migrant. Okay.